This is the downtown of San Jose, California, a city in the heart of Silicon Valley. Office workers no longer come here like they used to, and that's having massive impact on life in the city. What does this mean for the future of the city and others? I asked some local residents that question.
In my opinion, we're like regressing to kind of like agricultural, like lifestyle sort of, where you were kind of always in your little bubble and you never got to meet other people. So I'm kind of concerned about that.
People have to feel safe in a city. If they don't feel safe, again, you're going to lose the human connection. You're going to lose the desire for people to be connected. Loneliness is going to increase. Paranoia is going to increase. People need to be socializing to keep a healthy mental state.
People will feel like, oh, this is a culture desert, even though it's a city, but it's lacking still. Because think about why people come to the Bay Area for work, mostly because of the big companies here. And why they moved away? Because they cannot afford it. New York, it has a similar issue, but I would say less because it's unique in a way that you can't really go anywhere else to find it. But Bay Area, you just want a job that pays well, then you can find it maybe elsewhere.
I don't know. Yeah, again, worst cases, I'm thinking like, maybe thoughts of like xenophobia would probably go up, racism, like just because you don't meet people or you won't see you might be very against other cultures just because it's different from yours.
And they're not alone in feeling this way. Just as we left the pandemic, we entered a new epidemic, according to the US Surgeon General. The key symptom? Loneliness. And Silicon Valley also leads the nation in this trend. Just last February, San Mateo County became the only county in the nation to declare loneliness a public emergency. Could the rapid disruption to city life and rise of remote work explain our difficulties connecting with one another?
Yeah, ever since I left New York, and for example, when we first moved to San Diego, we were living there during the pandemic, so that was one aspect. But in San Diego, we didn't have that many friends, and it was hard to make friends because of the pandemic. But even after the pandemic, in San Diego, you pretty much have to drive everywhere. And I guess for some people, like for me, I was always very into let's go out and let's get some drinks to have like a deeper social interaction than just maybe saying hi at like work or at church or even just a one-time group event, right?
Well, I think the big thing for me is during the pandemic, I started working from home, and sort of post-pandemic, that's continued on. So I'm now a full-time remote worker. So that's probably been the biggest change, and the change that the pandemic kind of made in my life. Which at first, when you go home that first day and start working from home, you think it's a temporary thing, and then several years later, it becomes kind of the norm for me. So.
What about online forms of community? We can all remember the creative ways we learned to socialize during the pandemic using technology. Do they provide the same thing a city does?
I would say like work-wise or meeting-wise, a lot of people would choose to just do it remotely, have a Zoom meeting if it's doable. That's more convenient. And I've seen a lot of, like I said, I play instruments. I've seen more lessons being taught online, so people don't have to commute to a teacher's place or a studio, which is more convenient. But also I feel like at the same time you're lacking of the personal touch, where when you arrive at a place, before the lesson is happening or after the lesson is happening, you can have the conversation with a teacher just about like life.
Because I also find like with the online interaction, it becomes almost completely about work and business. But then when you actually get together with someone and kind of sit down with them or have lunch with them, you'll talk about a lot of other things like your family or hobbies or other things that maybe are a little bit outside of work.
It's easy to feel that chatting with somebody online is forming a friendship or engaging with that person on a personal level. As we have all realized, as we've all realized at some point, I'm sure, that's a facade. That's not really engaging with somebody. It's not like being face to face with them and spending time with them and learning about the person, their quirks and their blessings, and everything about them. So, yeah, I think we have to be intentional about it these days. I really do. You have to control your comfort and be willing to take a few risks, and also value personal interaction. Because if you don't value it, you're probably not motivated to do it. So,
the San Francisco Bay Area has seen an amplified impact of these trends, in part due to a concentration of technology companies that were quick to embrace remote work policies. Despite some attempts to bring workers back after the pandemic, the urban cores of the Silicon Valley remain at historic levels of vacancy. San Francisco recently hit a milestone 35% unoccupied commercial space, and San Jose isn't far behind. Compare that to cities like New York, where the office vacancy rate is about half of San Francisco's. We've been talking a lot about what cities aren't doing right now, but to take a step back for a moment, why do cities exist in the first place? What is a city?
It's a concentration of everything. When you have a huge population, it tends to, whatever's niche is enlarged in a city.
well, from my perspective, it's really an outgrowth of the human need to be social. We are social animals, and one of the reasons we've been successful as a species is because we are social animals and we help each other. Cities enable us to gather together and provide work opportunities, economic opportunities, business opportunities, play and recreation opportunities, education opportunities. The list goes on and on and on. And all of that is just a result of social interaction.
I next asked the panel why they thought the Bay Area is struggling with connection. What factors should we as residents be aware of?
I feel like that's just the nature of Silicon Valley because of the transient. I've actually heard one of my friends, she's been having this idea of moving back home. And because of that idea, she said she doesn't want to build a deeper connection with people, because if she did, she would have to lose it, and it's a harder goodbye for her.
We have gotten very comfortable in the United States. Our homes tend to be very comfortable. We have the big TVs. We have the gaming systems. We have the streaming video. There's less and less desire to wander outside beyond the door. And I've noticed that myself as I've gone into retirement. It's like, I don't really want to go anywhere. I just stay at home. I'm very comfortable at home. Well, you have to challenge that idea. And if you're finding that loneliness is encroaching upon you, then it's time to take the blinders off and realize there's a much bigger world out there in the city. And time to get yourself out there and go to a park, walk the dog, go to the grocery store, go to a movie, go to a concert, go to an art and wine festival, and mingle. Because it's got to be much more intentional in the U.S. these days because of our creature comforts.
I think you can have fun, like obviously in your home, in your little space, but I think eventually people want to see other people or experience other things. And I think it just makes sense where if you know there's this one general area or general city where you can go to experience, to maybe you don't even know what you want to do, but you want to experience something new, you can go to this spot, right? And then I guess even tying in with that, there's probably like some sort of transportation aspect to it and like pricing, and that allows you to easily get there as well. It just makes sense that we have these focal points that we want to revolve around, right? We don't just fly to any random spot. We fly to places because they have something that we want to see, right?
It's very hard to talk to your neighbors now. I live in Sunnyvale. I live in a condo. Me and my roommate were renting a 2-bedroom condo, and my place is really nice, but I haven't met even one neighbor. People moving in and out all the time. Maybe they just stay there for a year and then they move out. I stayed there for 3 years, but only God knows how long I'm gonna stay there, right? So it's really hard to get to know people. And we only have like 10 units in our entire building, and I barely see them. Even when I see them, we don't even say hi sometimes, which is very sad.
So what can we do to improve the situation in San Francisco and the Bay Area?
It's kind of like a chicken egg kind of thing. Like we want to develop maybe better public transportation, but there's no point in doing that if the population density or the event spaces or restaurants don't exist there yet. But they won't exist there if there's no public transportation. So
are we kind of overbuilding the office space? Should we focus more on residential or entertainment? Or what do we even do with our existing office space that's vacant or empty? Can we repurpose that somehow?
That's a really complex problem. And you were mentioning, how does San Francisco fare going forward with all of its issues? Well, transit is a huge issue for a major urban area. So we're going to need to look at it carefully. And when I say we, I mean everybody.
It was interesting to learn from the panel how cities like New York use infrastructure to foster human connection.
And to sum it up, another anecdotal thing that I've experienced was people can live in like literally all 5 boroughs, right? But we can all meet up in one central location to hang out, right, in general, right? And that's nice that we can all literally take the same exact system, pay the same exact fee, right? And we can all get to the same place, generally within a good amount of time. And then also, again, and hang out, and then knowing at the end of the hangout, again, we can use the same exact system to come back, and there should be no problems.
No doubt infrastructure like New York's has significant costs. But the San Francisco Bay Area doesn't lack funds for transportation. We spend billions a year on it. Could we use those funds differently to improve the results?
In the Reclaiming Our Downtown group, which the citizens activism group that I was working with in Santa Clara, there were transit specialists in that group. And I think every group needs to have some transit specialist.
Potentially we can try to be a little more forward thinking in terms of what transportation in the future might look like. I know with autonomous vehicles and the whole taxi and self-driving cars could potentially be a really big game changer for people just to be able to get around in general, which would of course help people to get in and out of downtown areas or even around the downtown. Some people don't have cars that they get away with taking the public transportation, whether it's the buses or the light rails, but those usually generally only work within those highly dense areas.
Making it easier to get to cities is obviously important, but what else in the design of the city or the culture is required?
That's a really good question. And I think it gets back to what I was saying earlier about accessibility and the ability to place make. And that's such a loaded word in the urban planning area. But to make places where people gather naturally or intentionally. So like, for instance, if you have an area where there's an art and wine festival periodically, that's a placemaking where people can intentionally gather and enjoy each other.
What's a good community? It's the people. It's never the building. It's never how much money you have. It's all about the people around you. If we collectively can look outwardly and taking care of the marginalized people, the least blessed people in terms of financial, I think that can transform your community.
Yeah, that's important to maintain a big picture perspective of an urban area. This is because we do become comfortable in our echo chambers and our little circles of comfort. And yes, there are people who are much better off than we are. And there are also people who are much worse off than we are. And it's important to maintain a healthy perspective of both of those. Because, you can't just go to a city board meeting and say, we're cutting off public transit because it costs too much and nobody's using it. I'm sorry. There are people who need that.
As the Bay Area goes through this season of difficulty, we have an opportunity to reflect on what we value out of life, to reflect on values we may have forgotten.
A lot of people are stuck at home and they don't know why they're sad. They don't realize they're missing something.
Because I think I've started to value like community and friends and just having people to hang out with. I think I've valued that a lot more after I felt like I lost a lot of it.
We like to pride ourselves on our ability to be self-sufficient, and that's wonderful, and we certainly are. But we also, I think, we lose sight of the fact how important social contact is and how important it is to be a social animal. I'm not personally comfortable with meeting new people on a cold basis right away. It takes me a little while to warm up, but I've learned that I need to do that. And I've learned that it's actually enjoyable to do that.
So can we be hopeful about the future of the Bay Area? About our communities? I think so. If you're like me and you wonder, where would I begin if I wanted to get involved? It turns out there are many resources, such as joining a local citizens action group, or writing to your city manager, or state or federal representative, or attending city planning and council meetings, where there's usually opportunity for public comment. But an even smaller step could be starting with your neighbors. What if the simple act of introducing yourself to a neighbor could transform a city?
These are huge problems. I'm really glad you're bringing some attention to these because it's really not talked about enough. We need to talk about it far more than we do.
There's with some of these things, there's never like a better time than now. The longer you wait, the more time you waste, or the potential for losing the opportunity.
And I've heard many people say Silicon Valley is dying or Silicon Valley is dead. I personally believe nothing could be further from the truth. They are San Francisco, San Jose, still very powerful technology centers, and I believe will continue to be so.
So if you've gathered anything from this conversation today, I hope it's that each of us have a role to play in shaping the cities that we want to live in. And so I'd like to leave you with the question, what do you want out of your city?